here today. Quiero dar las gracias a todos por estar aquí esta noche. I am so pleased that you were able to join us. Before we begin the panel, I wanted to make a comment about the services that my district office provides. My office is in downtown Chula Vista. I think a lot of you know where it is. And my staff is there to assist you. They can initiate congressional inquiries with any federal agency, as most of you know, and specifically if you have any trouble with it. That's whether it's an immigration issue, veterans, Social Security, or tax issue. My staff can help you, and they're happy to do that. They can request your case to be reviewed and provide you an answer. I want to make sure that you're aware of how we can assist you, and that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. As many of you know, my office sent out surveys via U.S. mail and online asking you which events you would like to see in your district. I'm grateful that so many of you remain engaged and responded. The survey responses revealed an overwhelming amount of support for an immigration forum like the one we're having today. We've organized. Your voices have been heard, and I'm here to represent you. We have a great panel lined up this evening, made up of immigration experts that serve immigrants in San Diego County, including my district, and you will have an opportunity to have your questions answered after their presentations. You should have received a note card when you checked in. Did everybody get a note card? Do you have note cards? Note cards? On the table? If you want a note card to ask a question, please.
Oh, like that. Yeah, we got a note card.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, we turned that sucker full.
Please write down your question on the note card and include the individual it is directed to. You may place it in the basket at the back of the room during the event, and we will read them aloud and have the panelists answer the question during the question and answer portion of the program. There are translators in the back of the room. If there are any people that don't understand your writing, brother, what does it say?
Spanish.
Spanish people. Okay, great. You learn that in elementary school, good penmanship. We're going to teach you that. But again, it really is an honor to have all of you here today. Obviously, this is a difficult issue for many, many people for a whole bunch of reasons throughout the spectrum of what your politics are. But for me, it was very important to bring this forward because I really wanted people to know their rights. There's a lot of fear in this community, and people are asking very important questions because these questions unfortunately become real. And they say, what happens if I get deported? What happens to my kids? What rights do they have? Am I going to have any contact with my children? Will I get to see them again? Well, the only time I ever be able to see them is maybe through the fence there in Tijuana, Friendship Park in San Diego. What can we do? Will I be deported? I didn't commit any crime. Is it just the murderers and the rapists that are going to get deported? All these questions, unfortunately, have come up, and we're seeing that there's real problems and fear in the community, so we have tremendous people here today to try to answer those questions, and we're happy to engage you. We do have cards. They're available here. I think we have plenty of time, too, to get into a question and answer period. But again, I thank each and every one of you for being here. Quiero dar las gracias a todos los que están aquí. Vemos que en esta comunidad hay mucho miedo ahorita. Hay mucho miedo porque vemos las deportaciones. Y mucho de lo que oímos es de las gentes, especialmente las madres, diciendo, ¿qué va a pasar con nuestros hijos si me deportan? ¿Voy a poder verlos o ya nos van a separar para siempre y nunca voy a poder mirar a mi hijo o mi hija? O solamente allí en Friendship Park vamos a poder verlos. Entonces, estas preguntas que tienen ustedes son reales porque se está viendo más y más. Y por eso tenemos aquí esta tarde expertos que pueden hablar con ustedes sobre los derechos que ustedes tienen como padres, como humanos. Y por eso esperamos que tengan preguntas, que nos las pregunten y tratamos de entonces tener respuestas para esas preguntas. Gracias. Entonces ahorita voy a presentarles a los que están aquí para poder seguir con el panel. Now I'm going to introduce the panel, let you know who they are, and we're going to get started. Nathan Fletcher, right here. Many of you probably already know him. Look at that. Well liked already. You haven't even said anything. No, because they've known your good deeds already, so your works speak louder than your words. Nathan is a Marine Corps combat veteran and former California State Assembly member. He's currently a professor of practice in political science at the University of California, San Diego. Nathan has also worked with my office on the issue of deported veterans. which is incredible, to deport veterans. We can get into that. He serves as the chair of the coalition of, quote, honorably discharged, dishonorably deported. Nathan will be discussing this issue more in depth, as well as in touch with the deported veterans package that I recently introduced. Again, thank you for being here, Nathan. I appreciate it. Esmeralda Flores. Esmeralda Flores is the Immigrants' Rights and Binational Affairs Advocate at the San Diego American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Esmeralda works on local immigrant rights issues and community presentations. She manages the ACLU's partnership with the Mexican government and non-governmental organizations in Mexico. She will be giving us a, quote, know your rights presentation. During times like this, it's important to know your rights and to be prepared, and we're very, very pleased to have an expert here with us tonight, and I thank you once again for being here. Thank you. Tammy Lynn, thank you for being here. Tammy, appreciate it. Tammy is the chair of the San Diego chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Tammy is an immigration attorney who served 8.5 years at the Jewish Family Service of San Diego. 0.5, huh? Was that the tough part? You had to put in the 0.5. Okay. She opened her own practice in 2016, focusing on immigration law. Her specialty on asylum refugee law was honed during her time at JFSSD, where she was hired to start the asylum program back in 2008. Tammy will be discussing DACA and what AILA members have been reporting under this new administration. Again, thank you very much. I have to ask about that 0.5 later on. But next we have Matt Holt. Matt, thank you for being here. Matt is the current member of AILA. Am I pronouncing that right? AILA? Yeah. AILA. Past chair of AILA's San Diego chapter and AILA's new member division. Matt has been a member of the California State Bar for 10 years and is a certified specialist in immigration and nationality law. His practice centers on removal defense, asylum, bond, appeals, humanitarian visas, waivers, and family immigration. He will be discussing deportation defense issues and how immigrant attorneys can assist you if you or someone that you know is detained. Again, Matt, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Alana hi. And she's last, but she's not least. It is my pleasure to introduce Alana of the United States Citizens and Immigration Services, USCIS. Alana began her public service career in 2000 with the Immigration and Naturalization Service as a district adjudications officer in Los Angeles, California. She has served the agency in many different capacities. She now serves as the current district director for District 24, overseeing operations in San Diego and Imperial counties. I also represent Imperial County, so thank you very much for being here for that too. It was important for me to have representation from one of our federal agencies that does so much to serve our community. And again, Alana, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And Alana will be speaking about the services that local offices offer, as well as the citizenship and naturalization process. After the panel, we will have time for questions and answers, and each panelist will be able to answer questions related to the topic they present. Okay, so now we're going to go first, I believe, right? To Nathan. Nathan, you want to stand up here, or whatever you want? All right.
Hey, let's give a big round of applause to Congressman Vargas for all of his work and bringing this together and doing it. It's my honor to be here tonight to share with you just for a few minutes and then take your questions. Frankly, on an issue that until last year I was unaware was happening. I spent 10 years in the United States Marine Corps. I did multiple deployments, and I spent the 10 years after my military service advocating for veterans, pushing for legislation, for issues surrounding them and trying to help them. And last year, early, I had a group come to me, some connected with Congressman Vargas, and they said, we need your help on this issue of deported veterans. And I said, well, you have some bad information, you see, because we have terrible injustices with deportation across the board, but you can't deport a veteran because they're eligible for citizenship. 1 day of military service in a period of war, and they get citizenship. And I said, I know this because when I was in the Marine Corps, we would have the naturalization ceremonies and we would have the citizenship ceremonies, and this is just what happens. And the recruiters would go and recruit people into the military with the promise of citizenship. And I said, so it's just not possible you can deport a veteran, and the reality is I was wrong. I was wrong. You see, from the founding of our country, we have depended and relied on non-citizens to join our military and fight in our wars, and we have told them, if you are willing to give your life for this country, we'll let you vote. We'll make you a citizen. Because it is the clearest path to earning citizenship. The other reality is, although we have made that promise, the Department of Defense has systematically failed to fulfill its end of the obligation. And we have now had generations of veterans, many of them who were told by their commanding officers, no, your citizenship is automatic. Many were told when you took the oath of enlistment that that was the oath of naturalization. Many of them believing they are citizens who at the time when their service ended and they were honorably discharged, struggled, which is not uncommon. A lot of times veterans, often tied to the military service, to the combat experiences, develop substance abuse issues, and they run afoul of the law. And no veteran is given a free pass. If they commit an offense, they're held accountable. And in each of these cases, for whatever infraction they committed, they were held accountable. But after they had paid their debt to the criminal justice system, they were deported. They were taken away from their family, they were taken away from their loved ones, they were taken away from the VA benefits that they earned and are entitled to and that they need in order to have a productive life. And now over 300 from more than 30 different countries have been deported. And so I was asked to build a coalition to help lead, to fight and try and pass the efforts of pioneers on this effort by Congressman Juan Vargas, who has been pushing this legislatively for years. And so last year, we launched a coalition called Honorably Discharged, Dishonorably Deported. And our efforts are to simply raise awareness of this issue, but also to push for solutions. We're supporting the efforts of Congressman Vargas and others in the U.S. Congress to try and make a difference and bring everyone home. Here locally, we've supported and pushed legislative efforts. We've had one bill signed into law already on post-conviction relief. We have another one pending before the legislature right now to provide actual immigration lawyers for California veterans who are facing deportation or who have been deported. And earlier this year, we were successful in getting Governor Jerry Brown to issue a series of pardons for some of the veterans who have been deported. And our hopes that if we can get a pardon for them, then that gives us the strongest legal case to try and bring them back. And so those are the things that we're doing. But in addition to all of those efforts, and I think most appropriate for tonight's gathering, is we are trying to reach the tens of thousands of veterans who are out there on the streets today, who may not know that their citizenship was not automatic. They may not know that that promise that was made was not fulfilled, and they actually have to apply. They are eligible for citizenship, but they have to apply. And so our coalition is offering a series of workshops where we will bring in lawyers and we will help veterans fill out their citizenship application. We will help them track down their service records, and we will make sure that they do that. And we have information at the table in the back available. But anyone who's interested can also go to deportedvets.org, deportedvets.org, and they can sign up for our upcoming workshops where we will have lawyers on hand and we will do this. Because the reality is there's tens of thousands of honorably discharged veterans right now in our community, in our streets, many of them believing their citizenship, not knowing that it was not automatic, that they actually have to fill out the forms and provide that. And so to the extent that we can get any individuals to utilize those services, then in the event that there's some infraction or some issue, they won't be subject to deportation. They will be citizens and they will be able to grant all the rights that I believe is consistent with anyone who's willing to give this life for our country. You know, in the Marine Corps, I'm a little biased. We love all of the branches. But in the Marines, we're a little biased. And we used to always say that freedom is not free. But don't worry, the United States Marine Corps will pay your share. And the reality is in this country, for a lot of those that were born here, I say to you that freedom is not free, but don't worry, a lot of people who weren't born here will pay your share. Because they love this country that much. And all that they ask for in return is a country recognizes their commitment and their service and their sacrifice and honors its commitment to let them remain in the country they were willing to die for. When I go down to Tijuana and I meet with the veterans who are there who have been deported, it breaks my heart. If I'm away from my kids for more than a day or two, it pains me. And these are individuals who have been separated from their kids for years. They've been separated from their family and from their spouses. They've been separated from the mental health and physical treatment that they need, oftentimes from injuries sustained as a result of combat operations. They have more than paid their price. And I think this is a terrible injustice that we have to right. And if there's anything in the immigration debate that it would seem like everyone can agree on, it should be this. But the reality is, although we have pioneers like Congressman Vargas who are pushing these legislative issues, most Americans are unaware that this problem exists. And I would say most members of Congress are unaware that this problem exists. We had tremendous success recently where Congressman Vargas brought a number of members of Congress from all over the country to Tijuana, and we're going to continue to build and raise. But I would ask you to consider going to deported vets and signing our petition. We have a simple petition that simply says we believe that anyone who is willing to join the U.S. military, fight and give their life for the United States should be a citizen and not subject to deportation from the country they served. Therefore, we support efforts to help all veterans who are honorably discharged achieve the basic right of U.S. citizenship. If you go to deportedvets.org, you can sign that petition and join our effort. In particular, Congressman Vargas has 3 pieces of legislation, H.R. 2761, the HOPE Act, Healthcare Opportunities for Patriots in Exile. This just simply says that these veterans are able to cross the border on a humanitarian parole to receive their VA treatment and benefits and then go back. It's the least we can do is try and help them survive until we can solve the problem overall. Congressman Vargas also has H.R. 2760, I-VETS, Immigration Veterans Eligibility Tracking System. One of the challenges we have in this issue is we don't know how many veterans have been deported. Because despite being a country that 45 years ago put a man on the moon and brought him back, we don't seem to have the ability to ask someone in the process of deportation if they were a veteran. Department of Homeland Security should check the veteran's status. They should give expedited citizenship and naturalization process, and then we should definitely be able to flag someone in the deportation process so that we can get them help and assistance. He also has H.R. 2759, the naturalization training sites, which will simply require DoD to do its job. When recruiters come and make you a promise to say you are eligible, you are entitled, you will get citizenship if you serve, and the Department of Defense should follow its obligation to do that. When I joined the Marine Corps, they managed to process a will and a power of attorney and a haircut and clothing and a dental check. They managed to give you a checking account and teach you how to use it. They have a whole series of hundreds of things that they do. And it doesn't seem unreasonable that in that process they can say, and here is where we process your immigration paperwork to fulfill the commitment that we made. I think one of the greatest injustices and tragedies in this is that these veterans who are currently deported, they are allowed to come home. They just have to die. When they die, we will bring their dead body across the border. We will take them to a military cemetery and we will have a full honors military funeral. We will play taps, we will fire a 21-gun salute, and uniformed members of the military will fold the flag over the casket. They will get down on a knee to a family member and say, "A grateful nation appreciates the service and sacrifice of your loved one." The same loved one that they wouldn't let live here. And so those of us that are working on this and fighting this effort are eternally grateful to people like Congressman Vargas who have been willing to push this issue early, who have been willing to bring their colleagues down here, who have been willing to make it a priority. And I don't know that we have anyone who's been expended more time and energy and effort in trying to address this problem than him. And so I just urge all of you to support the efforts that he's doing. Please go to our website. Please sign up and join the efforts. And then lastly, help us spread the word. You know, if you're a green card holder or a legal permanent resident and you served in the military, unless you definitively know that your citizenship was processed, then it wasn't. But even if you got out of the military 20 years ago, you are still eligible. And we have resources to try and help you. And so we would ask people to help us spread the word about our upcoming workshops in hopes that we can track down some of those veterans, get them the citizenship that they deserve so that they're never at risk of deportation, they're never at risk of being separated from their family, and they can remain in the country that they love so much. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for coming out. This is how we make changes. We educate and we raise awareness and we do those things. So thank you very, very much, and Congressman Vargas, thank you very, very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I know someone that's worked a lot harder than me on this issue, and that's Nathan. As you can tell, he doesn't want to leave anyone behind, and I appreciate it very, very much. Appreciate it. And you should see him when he goes to Tijuana, how the veterans respect him for all the work that he's doing, and he knows that not only his head, but his heart's there too, and we appreciate your hard work. Thank you. Esmeralda, what's there next? Thank you again for being here. Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esmeralda Flores. I work with the ACLU here in San Diego. Does everyone know what the ACLU is? Yes? Okay. So I'm going to be giving a short Know Your Rights presentation basically on immigration and what it means to be living in a border community. So next slide. So, well, everybody knows what the ACLU is. The ACLU was founded around in the 1920s. Our office here in San Diego started working in 1933. And since then, we have been working on immigrant rights issue throughout the county. So it's important to know that the Constitution protects everyone regardless of their immigration status. So there are certain basic rights that people have even if they're undocumented. So as I mentioned, living in a border community is important to know which agencies we deal with. So we have federal immigration agencies. We can see in the pictures here, we have ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We have Border Patrol, and we have CBP. And on the local level, we have our police and our sheriff's office. So it's important whenever you get in contact with an agency to know which one it is, to know what your rights are, and to know who you're talking to and what kind of information you need to give, or what kind of exercises what kind of rights you can exercise. So what should we do if we have an encounter with the police, or other agencies? So first of all, it's really important to know that we always have the right to remain silent, but it's not enough just to remain silent. We actually have to say to the officer that we want to remain silent for that right to be validated. If not, the officer will think we're just ignoring them, and he'll keep pushing for information, and the situation can escalate. So it's really important to let the officer know that you're exercising your right to remain silent. It's also important to have in mind that you don't have to consent to a search. There are a few exceptions for this, but in a general manner, you don't have the obligation to consent to a search if the officer doesn't have a warrant to do so. And every time that we are talking to an officer and they start asking a lot of questions, we have the right to ask them if we're being detained, arrested, or if we're free to go. So this is important because most of the times, and especially when it comes to immigration, they don't have the reason to detain the person, but since we always know that we should collaborate with law enforcement, we keep answering questions, and in that communication that we have with the officer, we can share information that allows them to actually detain us when previously they didn't have the information. So it's really important to ask the officer if you're being detained or if you're free to leave, and you can stop answering their questions and just leave in a calming manner. And it is important to know that we have the right to an attorney, but when it comes to immigration purposes, we still have the rights, but if we can't afford one, the government won't provide one. So either we're going to have to represent ourselves, or we're going to go through the removal proceedings without any legal representation. Next slide. Thank you. So, and other recommendations, just generally, we need to stay calm to not escalate the situation. Even if we feel like our rights are being violated, we don't recommend that you interfere with the police or obstruct their work. You should never lie to any law enforcement, to any agency, or present any false documents either. And in case you feel like the interaction probably wasn't lawful, or you have some questions whether your rights were violated or not, you should keep in mind to just write down everything that happened as soon as you can before you forget any details. Try to identify the officer, the agency that you talked to, see if there were any witnesses that can provide more information, and then just write it all down, and then you can contact the ACLU, or you can contact another organization that you trust locally. And what do we do if immigration shows up at our door? So basically, and the first thing that we always say to the community is do not open the door. That is really important. If you have kids in your home, let them know that they shouldn't open the door either, especially if they don't know who's on the other side. You should always ask what they want, who they're looking for. If they're looking for someone, you should always ask them for a warrant. In order for you to see the warrant, you don't have to actually open the door. You can just ask the officer to show it through the window or to pass it through the door. So if the officer says like you have to open the door for me to show you the warrant, that is not necessary. You can always choose another method where you can see the warrant. And when you get to see the warrant, you should always check 3 things. First, that they're looking for a person who actually lives in the address, and that the address is the correct one, and that the warrant is signed by a judge and not an immigration officer, because sometimes they'll try to pass a deportation order as a search warrant, and they're totally different documents. So it's really important to know that they have a search warrant that allows them to actually enter your home. If they do have the warrant and they're gonna search your home, our recommendation is that instead of letting them in, if the person is in the home, it's better for the family that the person steps out and talks to the immigration officers instead of letting the officers come in and talk to the other members of the family, because if there are other members within the home, they probably will get arrested even if they're not part of the initial warrant that the immigration officers have with them. So in order to protect the family, if the person they're looking for it's within the home, again, our recommendation is for the person to step out and talk to them in order not to put it at risk the rest of the family. Can you go back a little bit? Thank you. The other thing is if for whatever reason they enter your house or your home without permission, you should always just keep repeating that you're not allowing them to enter or search your home. But again, do not interfere with them because that will also put you at risk of getting arrested too for obstructing their job. You can, if you feel comfortable enough, you can also film whatever's happening so you can have proof later on. And I think that's it for when they go to your house. So right now, we haven't seen those big raids that we have in previous years, so this is why they're doing a lot of targeted enforcement actions. So they'll go to a person's home who they already have like a previous deportation order and they have their contact information. So they'll show up to their home, they'll arrest the person, and again, if other members of the family or any person who's visiting and they lack the documentation to be in the country, then they'll detain them too and they'll arrest them. So it's really important to know your rights. It's really important to not answer questions that you don't feel comfortable answering, and it's really important that you know your rights. So we have a lot of resources with us today in English and Spanish. We have some red cards that you can give, that you can save in your wallet, and you can give to the officer whenever you are being interrogated, like in the street while you're waiting for the bus, the trolley, after you leave work, etc. So we have a lot of know your rights resources, what to do in a checkpoint, what your rights are when you're crossing the border, because even if we're citizens, when you're entering the country, you have limited rights, and CBP officers or ICE can pretty much search whatever they want, or they can detain you for a lot of hours and interrogate you without a lawyer at the ports of entry or international airports. So it's really important for us to know your rights and to know the different areas where our rights are diminished. So I think that's it for me. If you have any questions, I'll be around later after the event and we'll have the Q&A too.
Thank you, that was excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We've got quite a lot Does that work? If not, I can hand you this one.
Yeah, you can pick one of the good ones.
Hi y'all. I'm not much taller, so sitting, it's about the same. You'll see pretty much what you'll see. So my name is Tammy Lynn. I'm the chair of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. We're a national organization of, I think we hit the 15,000 mark nationally. So locally we have about 300 chapter members. And first I just want to say I'm very humbled to be on this panel, and thank you to Congressman Vargas for getting this together for the community. Coming from the nonprofit background, I did a lot of these kind of know your rights discussions, and the best thing you can do is get information out there. So I'm tasked with talking about DACA. What you'll learn from immigration attorneys is that we really like things that sound very strange and that are made up of a bunch of letters. So what is DACA? DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, started under the Obama administration. You'll also hear them termed as Dreamers. There is a distinction. Before DACA was in place, for a while, the senators with Marco Rubio and bipartisan support tried to get the Dream Act through to actually give them permanent legal status, eventually even citizenship. What DACA provides for folks is a work permit and protection from deportation, which is really important because most of them have been living in fear once they realize, hey, I came here as a young kid, I don't have status, and this whole entire time I thought I was a US citizen, and legally I'm not. So the other thing that immigration and the government loves to do, just to make it even more confusing, is dates. Everything you have to tell us, if you go to an attorney and you say, do I qualify for DACA? Well, we're going to start asking you about dates. Were you 31 or under on June 15, 2012? That's a really arbitrary kind of date, but I think that's probably when Obama made the announcement. Did you come into the US before you were 16? Were you or have you been continuously living in the US since June 15, 2007? And on June 15, 2012, were you in the US? Were you physically present here? And are you continuing to be here when you apply? And sometimes this kind of gives a little hiccup in some people's cases, but do you have legal status? If you had legal status on June 15, 2012, you actually don't qualify for DACA. And who are we targeting? This is to allow folks who got brought over when they were younger. They did not have the mental, legal, or even any capacity to really know that they were brought in without any documentation. But these are the bright young kids that are working in our workforce today. So you have to show that you're in school right now. You got your GED. You were a discharged veteran, honorably discharged. You got your credentials, maybe if you did not actually finish high school or get the GRE. Or sometimes we've even had people try to go back to school to be able to get those credentials to qualify for DACA. And again, these are the folks who we want to keep here, who are helping with our economy. These are the folks that don't have felonies. You can't have a felony to qualify for DACA. No significant misdemeanors. No, you can't have 3 or more other misdemeanors. Not a public safety threat, not a national security threat. These folks go through fingerprint biometric checks. They go through serious screenings, potentially even interviews. So Matt and I actually were talking about, what we're running into now in this kind of new era of the administration. And a lot of folks are still coming and asking. They're saying, should I apply for DACA? Well, what we've kind of agreed upon in the immigration attorney community is, if you already have DACA, renew it. Keep yourself safe, okay? That way you can continue working, continue providing income, help the economy, help your family. Should you apply if you don't have it, but now you're qualified? That's something you need to really talk with your family about. Some people are gung-ho. I've had people, when this first happened, say, Tammy, I don't want to do it. I'm afraid to get my information out there. And others say, I can't live like this anymore. I want to be able to get that work permit, social security number, provide for my family, not be in the shadows, and get a driver's license. So, but if you do apply, if you are eligible now and you haven't done it yet, there's other benefits to it. One of which is, and Matt and I have talked about this, if you go to a well-established nonprofit, go to an immigration attorney, an attorney that knows what they're doing with immigration, you might be eligible for other things. It's not unusual to have folks come in and think, hey, I want to apply for DACA, that's all I qualify for, and then we find out, actually, you're a US citizen. You never knew that. Or even just last week, I found out, hey, you know what? There's this law that was back in the early 2000s, mid-1990s, and because of it, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, if your kids are 21 and U.S. citizen, you don't have to leave the country. You're eligible to get your green card here. And these are all things that you wouldn't know if you just go to someone, a notario, whoever, that fills out the form, takes your money, and doesn't actually provide any guidance. So what I really want to emphasize, and this is coming from my nonprofit background, I might be a private attorney, but those 8.5 years, it sticks with you. Get information, ask those questions, and make sure you talk to trusted attorneys and nonprofits in the community. Ask around. Okay? Some people do it, they're like, well, I can save myself some money if I go to this notario on the corner. It's not an issue of money, it's an issue about safety. And then lastly, other advantages Matt and I have been talking about is there's something called advanced parole. And in some circumstances, Matt's been doing this more than I have just because I recently started my solo practice. But in some instances, DACA students are eligible to go on school trips abroad, or family emergencies, which is very important when they haven't seen their dying grandmother or whoever in their country. And many times when you come back in, you're then potentially eligible to get a green card if you have other avenues available to you. And so it provides that protection. We have heard in the news a lot about DACA kids getting swept up, being detained by ICE, but on the other hand, if you have that DACA and you are swept up in that, there's going to be a big fight and a greater argument to get you out of that. So, and Matt, add whatever you want. So,
yeah. Matt's next. Matt, let's go, Matt.
All right, thanks everyone for being here tonight. I hope you can all hear me just fine. Thank you, Tammy. DACA has been really a godsend for so many people, for the 800,000 and counting that have received it, for their parents who brought them here, and so many others. I wish that all of our applications were affirmative. They were all happy applications to help someone obtain an immigration benefit, but sometimes the only way we can help them is by defending them in immigration court. I'm a removal defense attorney. I spend almost every day in immigration court, and I'm there to make sure that people aren't wrongfully removed from this country. Immigrants that are in this country, they have due process rights, they have Fourth Amendment rights, they have Fifth Amendment rights, they have the opportunity to examine the evidence presented against them. They have the opportunity to call witnesses. They have an opportunity to present evidence on their own behalf. They have these opportunities because they're protected by the US Constitution just like all of us. So with that, I have 6 minutes. I have 7 points, so I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. I'm going to... Oh, well then I may add on, but I'll give them to Director Al. So with that, the best defense is a good offense. So instead of getting placed in deportation proceedings or removal proceedings, the best thing to do would be to consult with a reputable immigration attorney, a specialist in immigration that can assess whether or not you qualify for some form of an affirmative relief or an affirmative application to fix your immigration status in the United States. So again, the best defense is a good offense. Now, that said, I'm going to say, if you're looking to fix your status, you're in a very vulnerable position. You're vulnerable, your family's vulnerable, and so I want you to take good care in deciding who's going to help you with your case. If someone says that they can help you and that there's a law that was passed and they can help you, ask them to show it to you. Read the law with them. This is mine, okay? This is mine, and when somebody comes into my office and they say, I want a benefit, if it's not here, I'm not helping them. So if you go to an attorney, you make sure that they can show you the law and how they can help you, okay? If they say, I have a case that I've done, it was just like yours, ask to see their work product. Ask to see how they prepared that case. You don't need to see the client's personal information, but you want to make sure that these attorneys...
For just 1 second, just for
just to make sure that someone's car doesn't get towed, and I apologize. It's a white Nissan Sentra. A white Nissan Sentra parked in front of someone's driveway on Island. A white Nissan Sentra. I just want to make sure no one gets towed if they didn't know they parked in front of a driveway, and I apologize for introducing my apology.
And if you don't like my presentation so far, I'll go move the car. But, you know, ask to see the form of relief, because people do get taken advantage of. And I think it's really important that we have the best facts to make the best decision, so that we can see so we can see all of our options before we make a choice. In order to get that information from an immigration attorney, just like Tammy said, you've got to know your history. You've got to know your criminal history, and you've got to know your immigration history. Everybody comes to my office, they all want to know if they qualify for something, and I say, well, when did you enter? How long have you been here? Have you ever left? How did you come back? Did you have any immigration encounters? What's your criminal history? And a lot of times they don't remember the dates, they don't remember what happened in criminal court, they remember they got arrested one time, but they don't remember what happened. And they don't actually remember if they were the one that got arrested or somebody else in the car got arrested. So you need to get your criminal and immigration histories down. And if you can't get it, or you're not sure how to get it, then ask the attorney to do it, or one of the fabulous nonprofits that we have in San Diego County. All right. Thirdly, ICE is everywhere. ICE officers are everywhere, and they're operating without the enforcement priorities that they were operating under. Imagine if Highway Patrol decided they were going to pull over anyone going over 65. And so you're going down the street, you see someone going 66, they get pulled over. So that Highway Patrol officer is now dealing with someone who was going 66 miles per hour. And then the guy going 85, drunk, flies by, swerving. Well, Highway Patrol's busy. They're not going to get the other guy. And that's unfortunately what ICE is doing a lot of the time. ICE is focused on what I would think are soft targets. They're old removal orders. I had one where they executed a removal order against a 3-year-old, and they went and picked him up a few weeks ago. He's now in his 20s. He has a removal order, he has no other criminal history. Why'd they pick him up? Why'd they have 4 cars, 8 armed agents go to his house? He has an infant. So they're everywhere. The ACLU, Esmeralda did a fantastic job of explaining the rights for those when they are confronted by ICE. One thing that I want to say about that is practice with your kids how to say no. And practice yourself how to say no, because it is very hard to say no to someone who has a gun and a bulletproof vest and is approaching you at 5:30 in the morning. As you get up, you barely had your coffee, and you're walking out the door to your car. It's very difficult to say pretty much anything to them. But to say, no, I'm not going to answer your questions is very difficult. So practice that, okay? Now, people will get detained. People are going to be discovered here without documentation. They are going to be detained. And if they are detained, they're going to present documents to you. They're going to present documents for you to be removed from the country. They're going to present documents to you for a voluntary departure. Or they may present documents to you to sign a form, go back to your house, and wait for a notice in the mail to go to court. A lot of times people say, I go to the detention center, and they're there, and I say, why are you detained? They said, well, I didn't want to sign anything. I refused to sign anything. And I said, wow. Well, they present a document to you that said, if you sign this, they'll just send you your notice in the mail, and you can be home right now. But you refuse to sign anything. So don't just tell yourself, I'm not going to sign anything. Look at what they're giving you. Talk to them about what they're giving you, and then call your attorney. Have an attorney ahead of time. Call the attorney and say, hey, they pulled me over. They're presenting these 2 documents to me. Which one should I sign? Okay? If ICE detains you, also, ask to see an immigration judge. The immigration judges are sworn to protect your due process rights. They are sworn to protect our system. See the judge. The judge will have to ask certain questions to verify whether or not you're eligible for certain forms of relief, whether you have an attorney or not. And if you go to your first hearing and you don't have an attorney, you can ask the judge, hey look, I want to hire an attorney, or I want to work with a nonprofit, but I haven't been able to get that attorney to represent me yet. Can I come back in a couple months? And I have not seen any judges say no to a person on their first court hearing. Okay? And then, one other thing, we need to make sure if you have a family that's a blended family, as a blended immigration status family, you have US citizens, you have non-citizens, you have residents, you need to have a family action plan, an emergency preparedness plan for your family. And that needs to be a thorough coordination between your medical professionals treating your family, your kids, your parents, your spouse, your cousins, your uncles, whoever it is that's going to be helping if you are detained or if you are removed from the country. You have to have that family action plan. You need to think about schools, medical appointments, medication, rent, bills, immigration documents such as passports. All young children, everybody should have their passports, because if mom or dad gets deported, and it happens, 180 a day, 180 parents of US citizens are getting deported from this country every single day. So it's happening, and it's happening here in San Diego. Those kids should be able to visit their mom and dad quickly. You also need to have matters of guardianship and powers of attorney in place so that your family and the rights and the opportunities of your family are protected. And then last, because we are in the South Bay region, we're down here, please make my life easier by not missing the exit at the end of the 5 freeway and the 905. Because people miss that exit. I don't care how good the outlets are, there are outlets in Carlsbad too. Don't miss the exit. Because I have people that call me and they say I missed the exit. And even sadder, in the last 3 months, I've had 3 separate people that have been detained. They were passengers in cars. Officers said they were surveilling the drivers. They were passengers in cars. They were all DACA eligible. They have been DACA eligible for 5 years, right? And they hadn't applied. And now they're stuck in deportation. They're having to, 2 of them have been detained. 1 of them wasn't detained. But we're having to defend them, and that's a lot more money, and that's a lot more stress on the family. So, yes, don't drive into Mexico inadvertently, and also apply for benefits first. Don't wait to get picked up. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Director Al.
Thank you, Matt. That was excellent. I appreciate it. My earlier announcement is actually a white Nissan Frontier. A white Nissan Frontier. Sorry about that. It is correct. Frontier. I don't know. I hope so. Sorry. And appreciate that. Also, if you are going into Mexico and if you have a weapon, don't miss that last exit. Unfortunately, we've dealt with a number of people who have accidentally driven into Mexico with a gun and trying to get back across. One was, of course, became a very celebrated case. We were able to work out a number of them quietly with the Mexican authorities, because in a number of cases we were actually U.S. military who just forgot that they had a weapon in the car, and we were able to work things out with the Mexicans, but it's very difficult. So again, don't miss that last exit. You know, take the last exit. Don't go into Mexico, especially if you have an armed weapon. And by the way, I studied to be a priest for 5 years. Those don't go away easy. That's why I love Mercy, and I appreciate what you guys do, especially you, Matt. God bless you for it. Okay, Alana, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Let me extend the cord here again. I really appreciate you being here. We're not hear from you.
Thank you, Congressman Vargas. When I was asked to participate in this panel, one thing that struck me is just what has struck me initially when I came here to San Diego 2 years ago is how much the community here in San Diego in particular comes together over issues that are sensitive that deserve a discussion as we're having today. So thank you Congressman Vargas for organizing this. I was asked to speak about what my office or my agency, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, offers in terms of services locally here in San Diego, as well as to discuss the naturalization process. So just in terms of, by way of background for all of you, I think many of you may be familiar with the agency that was once known as the Immigration Naturalization Service, or INS. But in 2003, when the Department of Homeland Security was formed, there were 3 immigration agencies that were established. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is the agency that I work for, is in charge of immigration benefits. So green cards and naturalizations. We're the agency that decides applications for individuals who are wanting to become new U.S. citizens. The other agencies that you're familiar with that we've been discussing this evening, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, is responsible for interior enforcement or deportations. And there's also Customs and Border Protection. When we were discussing earlier about driving further past the last exit on the 5, it would be Customs and Border Protection that you would see on the way back, or even Border Patrol that you see in the green uniforms as part of CBP, which is the third agency. But USCIS, the agency that I'm with, just in terms of background, we're an agency that's roughly about 17,000 employees total, nationwide as well as internationally. We have some offices, about 30, that are located internationally, and 25 districts here in the domestically, 88 field offices. Here locally we have an office in San Diego and then one also in Imperial. The office in San Diego is downtown. It's about 3 blocks away from the federal building. The address is 1325 Front Street. We're right next door to where the Social Security Administration is, if that's a location that's familiar to you. And Imperial, for anybody who may be interested, we're located at 509 Industry Way in Imperial, California. In terms of volume annually, between the 2 counties, San Diego and Imperial, we process roughly 15,000 applications for naturalization. So that's about 15,000 new U.S. citizens within San Diego and Imperial counties each year that we welcome. 6,000 green card applications, so 6,000 new lawful permanent residents that are decided each year. We also have people come to our offices because we offer information. You schedule those appointments through a system known as InfoPass on our website. You can access through our website, and we see about 18,000 individuals through those InfoPass appointments. And in addition, we also capture biometrics. So for everybody who applies for a benefit with the government, we want to be sure that the person is eligible and also it doesn't have any type of background concerns. So we capture biometrics and conduct background checks on those individuals. In addition, at this appointment, the person's picture and other identifying information is captured. So if they qualify for the benefit, then those biometrics are available for the production of their green card, let's say. Within San Diego and Imperial counties, this may be of interest for individuals. The top 5 countries or demographics that are represented for individuals who are naturalizing, top 5 countries are Mexico, the Philippines, Iraq, Vietnam, and China, and that's for San Diego County. And in Imperial County, it's Mexico, the Philippines, El Salvador, India, and Peru. So that's the compilation of the top countries that individuals are coming from who naturalize or are immigrating or naturalized within those 2 counties. As far as, so the conversation that I'm having today with you is about how a person becomes a citizen, but before a person can become a citizen, they first have to be a green card holder. So you're probably curious about how does somebody get a green card to begin with. There's various avenues for individuals to obtain a green card. Most commonly, it's through family-based means, or if not through employment-based means. Also, a person who enters the country as refugee or ends up becoming an asylee can adjust or become a green card holder, as well as special classifications for individuals to become green card holders. What happens is that some individuals may process outside of the United States. They'll go to a consulate, a U.S. consulate in the country that they're from to get their immigrant visa. And then for the others that are here in the United States, they go through a process called adjustment of status, which my colleagues here beside me are very familiar with. So adjustment of status is essentially if I come in here into the country, and let's say as a student, an F1 student classified, and I meet somebody, and this person and I fall in love and we get married, and the person happens to be a U.S. citizen, the person could petition for me and I could adjust status and get my green card here in the United States. So that's one example of an avenue that could occur. So that's how somebody can obtain a green card. So once a person has a green card, they have a choice of becoming a U.S. citizen. If they had obtained their green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen, they could do that within 3 years of becoming a permanent resident. If, however, they were able to obtain their green card through some other means, then it would be 5 years before they could apply for naturalization to become a U.S. citizen. The qualifiers for a person to become a U.S. citizen, first, they have to be at least 18 years or older. They have had to have been a lawful permanent resident for either 3 or 5 years, as I had just mentioned, under the different circumstances. They have to reside in the United States, and also be physically present in the United States for a required period of time. They also have to, in order to be considered within San Diego, they have to live within the jurisdiction of San Diego. So for instance, if I'm somebody that lives over in Temecula and I want to be processed in San Diego, then there's going to be jurisdictional issues, and that person would have to go to another office with jurisdiction. Also, the person has to demonstrate that they have good moral character. We want to be sure that the people that are becoming U.S. citizens are ones that have demonstrated that they are going to be a good contributing citizen here in the United States if we grant them naturalization. As far as what they need to do in order to qualify for citizenship, if they meet those initial criteria, then they also have to demonstrate that they have a basic understanding of English, and that they also have knowledge of U.S. government and history. They also have to demonstrate that they have an allegiance to the Constitution, that they uphold it with the level of respect that would be expected of a citizen. So as far as English is concerned, and there are a lot of different classes that are here held inside of the community that help people prepare for their becoming a citizen. But let me talk about the English portion first, and then we can talk about the civics portion. For English, the person would be, after they file the form, they sit before an officer inside of the office, let's say here in San Diego over downtown. The officer will see whether or not the person is able to read English, and they would be required to read at least one of 3 sentences that's presented to them. Also, the officer would determine whether or not they could write English, so they would need to write at least one of 3 sentences that's presented to them. And also the officer in the conversation with them, that would be just a course of asking the typical questions that are asked during the course of a naturalization interview, would determine whether or not they could speak English. There are waivers for the English requirement. There's 50-20 or 55-15, and what that means is if you're 50 years of age or older and you've lived in the United States for 20 years or longer as a permanent resident, then you can be exempt from the English test and you can take the civics test in your native language. Or if you're 55 years of age and you've been living in the United States as a lawful permanent resident for 15 years or longer, then the same thing would apply for you. You would be exempt English and you'd be able to take the civics test in your native language. There's also the 65-20 exemption, and that's for somebody who's 65 years of age or older and have lived in the United States for 20 years or longer. That person would not only be exempt the English test, but they would be able to take a simplified civics test. So instead of, because part of the civics test, there's a population or a pool of about 100 questions, or not about, but there's a pool of 100 questions. So if somebody qualified for the 65-20, they would only have to remember 20 of that, of the 100 questions that potentially they could be tested on. One thing that is really great with technology is that USCIS has been very forward-leaning as far as trying to find different tools that can help people prepare themselves for the civics portion. Because being a daughter of immigrants and having watched my parents go through the process and how nerve-wracking it was for them as they dutifully studied for it, I understand how the experience can be, and same for many of the people that we've come across in the community. They are very conscientious. They want to be able to learn and be able to pass. So USCIS, not only do we have information on our website, which is uscis.gov, but we have hardcover material, not hardcover materials, but not soft copy materials, what am I trying to say? Hard copies of brochures that we can hand out to help somebody study for the test. We also have an app online, and that app is USCIS Civics Test Study Tools, and it's by USCIS at the Department of Homeland Security. It's really important to make sure that it's, and I'll repeat it again for anybody who's wanting to take a look at the app. It's free, as opposed to some of the other similar or comparable apps that are online that are not free. This one is by USCIS and it's free. Again, that title is USCIS Civics Test Study Tools, and the maker of it is USCIS at the Department of Homeland Security. Also, USCIS has a YouTube channel. I just found out about that today, so I can't give you too much information other than the fact that it helps people prepare for the civics exam. So that's also another resource that's available to individuals. We do have here locally several workshops that we have in different locales throughout San Diego County and also Imperial County. So individuals who want to learn more about what the process is for becoming a citizen, that's a place where that can happen. We have also hosted group tours inside of our offices for people who are apprehensive about the process and what it is, how the office is, and how the interaction with the officer may be. We've done that with some of the community colleges, in concert with the community colleges that are offering citizenship instruction. Let's see. Also, as far as there's also what's known as a disability waiver, which is filed on a form N648. So for somebody, let's say, that has cognitive disability that prevents them from being able to learn, they may qualify for a waiver of both the English requirement as well as the civics requirement, but that's something that would require their medical professional to complete on their behalf in advance of the interview. As far as the process for filing, I think my colleagues to my right could explain that in greater detail, but suffice to say that it's typical, like with most government benefits, there's a form that needs to be filled out and a fee that needs to be paid with it. People who are eligible can qualify for a fee waiver, and that's something that is available to some. What happens is after you file your application, then USCIS would send you a receipt and then an appointment to go and have your biometrics captured, which is basically capturing your fingerprints in a photo. And then after that, you can await the interview notice. Currently, we're taking about 6 months in terms of processing. So from the time of filing, about 6 months or roughly thereabouts, you'll be scheduled for an interview. So the benefits of becoming a citizen, I think for those of us that have been born here in the United States, sometimes we take some of that for granted, but the benefits of becoming a citizen is the right to vote, to participate in this American democracy.
Hopefully not corrupt people that are funded by big banks, okay? And not Jerry Brown people. I don't care either party.
Let her finish, okay?
Let her finish.
Thank you.
So in addition to participating in the American democracy and the right to vote, you also, as a U.S. citizen, have the ability to be able to run for an elected office or to apply for a federal government job or to travel with a U.S. passport. So those are all benefits of becoming a U.S. citizen. Finally, again, the local office is located at 1325 Front Street here in San Diego. If anybody, for instance, has questions, you're able to schedule an appointment and speak directly with an officer at our office. And that's something that's available to you. Or if, for instance, let's say somebody has a case that's pending with us and they can't make it to the office, USCIS also has an 800 line, and that number is 1-800-375-5283. Again, that's 800-375-5283. There are English and Spanish operators that are available on that toll-free line. But also what happens is if your case is pending with us and you pose an inquiry, then that inquiry will come directly to the local office for response. Finally, one last thing actually that I do want to mention and echo the sentiments of my colleagues to my right, Matt and also Tammy. With respect to finding legal help, I will say this has been a topic that has been near and dear to me as far as from when I first arrived here, because it is something that the community is impacted by, and is something that despite people of different backgrounds can agree that it's a common issue and that we want to address, which is preventing people from being scammed, or preventing people from getting bad immigration advice. Because when that happens, there's a host of different scenarios where this could occur. Sometimes it's people that really have bad intentions, trying to scam somebody and take their money and not file anything. Other times it could be somebody who just is not doing it well, and therefore they send the person down a path that it's difficult for them to recover from. And others could be well-meaning family members, community members, friends, colleagues, to try to help you finish the paperwork, thinking it's just paperwork, but in fact, these are legal documents, and it sets you down a path. So reiterating the point that my colleagues have made, and also for those in the audience's benefit, I highly encourage those of you here that if somebody finds themselves inside of an immigration situation and requires legal assistance, to actually get legal assistance from people that are experts in the field, whether it be attorneys or through the Department of Justice approved organizations that have either no cost or low cost legal assistance. And I'll end on that note. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alana. And by the way, my wife and I, back in around 1999, we adopted a family that was a refugee family. The United States had airlifted them out of Kosovo, and they spoke Serbo-Croatian and Albanian, not two languages that I'm familiar with. And again, they were hosts of the United States. We had airlifted them out, and through Catholic Charities, they were looking for placements. We placed them in our home, more than doubled our home. We were 3, they were 4, and went through the process, and you guys were actually excellent. And again, they had language issues because they spoke Serbo-Croatian. They were very apprehensive because they were lucky to get out of their country alive. A lot of them, because they're Muslim, a lot of them were slaughtered there. And so you guys were great, and it was great for you to be here. I thought it was very informative. Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear it for all the members here. I think they did a great job. Now we're going to go to the questions that you have here, and I think that we have some more questions here. I know that there is translation in the back for some people that may not understand English also well, but anyway, there is translation. Okay, first question. It doesn't say to whom it's addressed, but it says, what is the status of Dreamers? What is the status of Dreamers? Who'd like to handle that one? I'll hand you the microphone because I doubt that one works. Does that work?
Testing.
This one works better. Here, take this one.
So the question was, what's the status with Dreamers right now? I know that at least, and you probably are more well-versed than I am about this, but legislatively I think there was, or is going to be, a reintroduction of an act to specifically protect folks who fall into the kind of the Dreamer DACA category. But I think it crosses party lines that people are aware in our country that these folks are people who should be here, are contributing to our society, and should be protected from any kind of deportation action.
The only thing I could add is this, that I did have the chance to speak to General Kelly, and General Kelly said that he's the best thing going for Dreamers in the country because he says he's going to try to respect, or I don't know if that will change. That simply is something that he told us in a group, and happy to bring it forward. But the status, my understanding is that the law will be proposed, but I doubt it's going to go anywhere. How will Trump's discourse impact immigration in the near future? Would like to handle that one?
Well, I think if nothing else good can be said of what's been said with respect to immigration by the administration, it's at least that we're talking about it, that we're here tonight. And we're probably all here with different backgrounds, we're all here with different reasons, we're all here with different motives, but we're all here because it's an issue that affects us. And so it's good that we're talking about it. If we're wasting government resources trying to deport the PTA mom or the soccer coach dad or the 18-year-old who should be in deferred action, then that's a travesty. It's a horrible waste of government resources. I hope that we continue to work together. I hope that people continue to come out of the shadows and ask if there's something that can be done to help them. I probably have sometimes 10 or 15 consultations in a day where I'm doing free consultations. I work in the schools, I work at different churches. I talk to a lot of people, and probably 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 7 that I talk to have some form of affirmative relief that they can seek. That means 1 out of 5, 1 out of 7 can come out of the shadows and fix their status. So if all of this fear and apprehension propels them into a better place, that's great. But if it's just moms and dads getting deported or ripped apart from their families, then we can do better as a society.
Next question. I have friends who are not citizens. What can I do to help? Anyone want to handle that?
Well, I think one of the challenges we face is if you're an immigration lawyer today, just speaking for them, you're overwhelmed. And I think that there's a number of groups that provide legal representation for folks. You know, one of the challenges of folks, and we've certainly encountered this with the veterans, is there may be help available to them if they can find a quality lawyer and then if they can afford them. Because the reality is you can't ask every lawyer in the country to work for free. And so there's organizations, the ACLU and these other nonprofits and groups who help provide immigration lawyers. And a lot of folks, I think everyone here probably, certainly on this panel, they're much well versed in this than I am, but I think a lot of Americans just think, well, you're entitled to a lawyer. And the government will pay for it. And that's the case if you have a criminal charge, but if you have an immigration charge, that's not the case. And so I think if you care about this issue, then you need to go to those tables and you need to support those organizations that are raising money to provide legal representation for people who are facing deportation. And I think that's something you can do. The other thing you can do is more in the political realm. Look, we have solutions that have been put on the table. You know, it wasn't that long ago that 70 US senators voted for a comprehensive immigration reform. And at the end of the day, the members of Congress in some way will reflect the mood of the public. And right now the mood of the public, I think, is one where we have to win the case and we have to convince people that this is not humane, that this is not right, this is not who we are as a people. And that people deserve better and we shouldn't be ripping families apart. And so I think lending your voice to the fact that we need a compassionate, humane, just immigration system will also do that. So I would say those two things. I'd say give your money to help people get lawyers and lend your voice to the cause to make sure that as a country, our laws that are passed reflect the values that I think all of us here hold.
I would also add the churches. The churches have been very, very active in this issue for a long time. And again, if anyone's here from the churches, thank you for your help. Interestingly, it seems like most of the churches now involved. It used to be mostly just the Catholic Church. It seems like all churches are involved now. Can people who have been deported come back to the U.S. after their 5, 10, 20-year bar? Matt, that's probably you.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on the two preceding responses as well, the other thing that you can do for your friend, your neighbor, your coworker, your fellow churchgoer without documentation is help them to be a better dad, help them to be a better mom. Because if you're a good dad, if you're a good mom, if you're a good student, you're much more likely to get the discretion of the government to allow you to stay here. Almost every form of relief in the United States but one is based on the government's discretion. So be a good mom, be a good dad, and help them too. As far as the other question,
5, 10, 20-year bar. People who have been deported come back to the U.S. after 5, 10, 20-year bar.
Yes, often I am begging with packets this big of documentation, of bona fides, of good faith documentation showing that this person is deserving of coming back into the United States. Many times I'm begging the director's office to allow my client to come back with a waiver after they've been out of the United States for 10 years and they've stayed out for the 10 years that they had to stay out as a penalty for having lived unlawfully in the United States previously. So if you've lived here previously, then you're going to have to stay out for potentially 10 years unless there's a waiver available for you to come back earlier. There are waivers also for 5 years, and there are waivers for the 20 years. There are a number of waivers based on criminal history and based on being a victim of a crime. So yes, there are possibilities, but before you go throwing your work, throwing your money towards that form of relief, make sure that the attorney knows how to do it.
It's called visa overstay.
I know it's also tough. We had a hearing in Washington where a Marine was deployed, came back, and what he was fearing is not death. He called himself a point Marine, which I guess meant that he was out deployed. He was very proud of that. And what he said he was most afraid of was his wife getting deported because they didn't know how his 2 children were going to be taken care of, which really was moving to listen to this Marine, because he didn't seem like a very brave person, except that he was fearful, again, that his wife was going to be deported And she was barred, I guess, for 10 years because she had come, she had been caught, she had been deported, she came back to reunify with her husband. Anyway. Okay, how do we get back to talking about comprehensive immigration reform? You know, I'll take that one. You know, it's interesting, for all the time that I've been in Congress, I've been there, it's my 5th year, I go every Thursday that I'm there, in fact, I'm the one that has missed less meetings, to a bipartisan prayer group. And I go there and I'm a pretty liberal Democrat, and we had pretty conservative Republicans. And it's interesting when we talk about issues generally of mercy and all these other things, we agree. And then when it comes down to the practical aspect of immigration reform, we can't seem to agree. But I always say this, and I mean this, you know, there are some very, very good people on both sides of this discussion. We have to figure out a way to get back to what is great in our country, which is justice, but also mercy. We have to get back to that. We have to figure out how to do that so we can come together around controversial issues like this. They're difficult issues, I understand that. I mean, my perspective is very clear, but I know the perspective of other people are very clear. A good example, they would say, well, breaking the law is breaking the law. I said, I happen to be a lawyer. I said, you know, one of the things that's interesting, when you talk about violating the law, there is something that is, they talk about it in Latin as malum per se and malum prohibitum. So for example, murder. Murder is malum per se, which means that the action is bad in and of itself. So the malum, the bad, is itself illegal. So if you kill somebody, obviously that's a bad act. If you murder somebody, it's also illegal. Now, malum prohibitum. What's malum prohibitum? Malum prohibitum means it's illegal because we prohibit it. I give the example of driving on the freeway. Someone gave that example. If you drive 56 miles an hour and the speed limit is 55, you've just broken the law. You're a lawbreaker. But your vehicle is made to go 70 miles an hour safely. The freeway is made to go 70 miles an hour safely. But we've decided that the speed limit is going to be 55. That makes no sense. So we changed the law. And we can do that because the action itself of driving 56 miles an hour is not in itself immoral or wrong. No one would say driving 56 miles an hour on a freeway that was built to go 70 in a vehicle that you can drive safely at 70. No one would say that's a terrible thing. In fact, we would change the law. We would decide that that doesn't make any sense because everyone's driving over 55 miles an hour. That is malum prohibitum. And how can we change that? Just simply by deciding to change it because it doesn't make any sense. We do that all the time. Because why? The action itself is not immoral. It's not like malum per se. The action itself is bad. And this is one of those issues where if a person is trying to better himself or herself, I think that that is malum prohibitum. We prohibit it, but at other points in our country's history, we allowed people to come in literally by the millions because we thought it was going to be a good thing for the United States. We changed the law.
No, we didn't. The law should be enforced. The people never approved that.
Yeah,
you congressmen did.
It's interesting.
You congressmen ignored the law.
Because the law changes. Again, there's nothing immoral about a mother
It's the
trying
law.
to unify with her kids. That is, again, something that most of us would say, what is that mother, a lawbreaker or a good mother? Most people would say that's a good mother, especially a Christian person would say.
It doesn't matter. The law is the law.
That's why the law gets changed.
We don't want the law changed. The American people don't want the law changed.
Well, I think the American people do.
These here may, but the majority in the nation do not want it changed.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. No, this is a discussion I think we're going to have. Obviously, yelling, screaming does little other than...
I have to yell above them, and I have to yell to be heard.
No, it's just because you want attention. That's
no,
why
it's not. No, it's not.
People want to give him some attention. He's right over there. There he is.
I want the law enforced. I want the law enforced.
There you go. Okay.
But do we have to suffer? Can they come in and we don't suffer? That's the most important thing. I'm not saying they're all bad people. Most of them are not. The problem is people like you that benefit from their corruption and Jerry Brown.
Right.
That's really the problem.
The Congress is corrupt.
So
the Congress is corrupt.
Also. Can we give this young man some attention? Looks like he needs some attention. There you go.
The Congress is corrupt. Now, you need some attention yourself.
Now we need, now that they've had some attention, they seem that they crave attention. They've craved attention, they got their attention. Now we're going to the law-abiding citizens that actually are playing by the rules tonight. You guys that love the rules so much are actually the ones yelling, out of turn, out of line. So let's go to the next question.
Right.
People that actually played by the rules.
Right.
People that actually played by the rules here, unlike yourself.
Right.
And the young gentleman there.
There you go.
My daughter has been a resident for 20 years and speaks English. She is low income but wants to become a citizen. Can she get help with paying fees? Well, I think that's yours.
If I understand correctly, the daughter's been here 20 years as a permanent resident, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, so the USCIS does offer the ability for the fees to be waived or if not reduced if the person qualifies. On our website, it shows exactly what the person needs to do in order to be eligible for that, but as part of the filing, you would request the fee waiver. So, in the answer to that is yes. They could qualify for a fee waiver.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. All right. A family member is a permanent resident, 6 years, and doesn't speak English. Can she take the citizenship exam in Spanish? No. That was easy. Okay. How old must a U.S. citizen be to immigrate his or her parents? I think it's at 18? 21. 21. I'm getting better at this. Okay. So Nathan, this is for you. I support a group called U.S. Unified Deported Veterans of America. Do you have contact with them? Here, let me give you the name. The name is U.S. Unified Deported Veterans of America.
I don't know. I'll check with the folks who are working on it. We've been trying to build a coalition of folks that are committed to this, and a lot of different groups have been working on it, and we've been really supportive of a lot of the groups that are out there. So if they're a group that's trying to make sure that every veteran comes home, then we would be more than happy to work with them. So we will look it up. I have the card here. I'll keep it and we will check it out.
I'm going to have to use my glasses so I didn't... Esmeralda, ACLU, at Matt. We have clients being released from detention. ICE is not returning their ID documents. Is there a reason for that? Is it legal? Who would like to handle that one? Esmeralda or Matt?
Yes, it's legal for them to secure your international travel document. So if they have your passport, they can hold on to your passport for the duration of the proceedings. That said, you can go to the consulate and ask for another passport.
There are instances when maybe you won your case or you finish your case and they haven't released it, in which case there's also avenues of contacting ICE or whoever has the document to get those back. It can be kind of tedious, but definitely talk to someone well versed in it, and it is possible.
The attacks on immigrants are bipartisan. Where do you stand on the fact that under Obama, nearly 3 million people were deported? That's probably for me. I was very much against the deportations that he had. In fact, he was called the deporter-in-chief by many. I went to school with Barack Obama. We were classmates at Harvard. I've known Barack for a long time. And I was very disappointed in what he was doing, especially when it came to children that had come to the United States as small children, and yet they were being deported. I thought it was great injustice. When I got elected, I was able to go and talk to him about that particular issue and encouraged him to do more. I was disappointed, frankly, that he didn't do more. I think that there was a lot of breaking up of families, and again, I studied to be a Catholic priest for a long time, a Jesuit, and I come from Matthew 25. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. If you go back to Matthew 25, you can read, he goes through, he says, Jesus says, they're going to, at the end of time, they're going to separate the goats from the sheep. And he says to the people there, he says, when I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. When I was sick, you healed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. And when I was in prison, you visited me. And then they say, well, when did we do that? They said, when you did it to the least among you, you did it for me. Then he says to the people on the other side, he says, the same thing, goes through the same litany. And they said, well, wait a minute, when did we not do that for you? He said, when you didn't do it to the least then you didn't do it
Stop
to me.
preaching.
And so, yeah, it's preaching.
Do it with your own money.
Let's get elected.
Do it with your money, not my money.
You need some attention. Give the gentleman again some attention. He craves attention.
Do it with your money, not with my money.
To me, to notice the people that are saying that they're law-abiding, rule-following, the ones that actually break it. Thank you for exemplifying that perfectly tonight.
You're trying to control this so you don't get anything embarrassing to you.
No, I actually can talk about anything. I just preached and I didn't get
He's a Democrat, he can bullshit his way through everything.
I was very sad that he deported so many people. I don't think it's what's best in our country. Meanness, nastiness, that's not what's best in us as Americans. And so I was very disappointed in him. However, I do think he did some good things when it came to immigration towards the end. I wish he would have done more. Okay. So, this is from a retired captain. You might be able to read his handwriting better. I mean, it is for you.
The question said, what is the current law regarding citizenship for military personnel? When I said I was wrong, it was just I was unaware. And so the question says, when you stated you were wrong. I didn't believe that as a country we were actually deporting honorably discharged veterans. Because my experience in the military was that they were granted citizenship, and having known people who were promised it and being familiar that they were eligible for it, I thought it was something that was taking place. And the reality is that it wasn't. And it was the good work of the ACLU and a number of other folks who put out an amazing report that really helped raise awareness and led a lot of us to support efforts like Congressman Vargas. And I think that one of the things that the issue of deported veterans allows us to do is talk about the immigration issue in a way that a lot of folks aren't familiar with. Because I think one of the problems is when we talk about immigration, we lose our basic humanity as people. And I think that a lot of folks kind of fail to understand or really equate to what if that was your family member that was being ripped apart? And what if that was your person that came here and was told it was okay and was given a job? And I'll never forget being at an issue like this and someone said, do you support rounding up all those people who broke the law and throwing them in jail? And I thought for a minute and I thought, yeah, if we do it consistently. If we round up all the folks that hired them to wash their dishes and mow their yards and watch their kids and build their hotels and cook their food, because the reality is our immigration system is fundamentally broken on both sides and we only want to enforce one half of it. And so I think when we talk about this, they aren't following the laws, they aren't doing that, well, we don't talk about that consistently. We're willing to let one half of it go away, and we aren't willing to see the humanity in the other half. And I think as we talk about this immigration issue that we need to confront these issues directly, and we need to talk about the facts about who pays taxes, and who uses public services, and who uses the criminal justice system. And in an era where it's so hard to put facts out there, there are some basic facts about these things. And so I think that we can all make a real difference in this issue. And I found that by talking about deported veterans, we've been able to bring the humanity to a group of folks who may think differently about an issue because they were a veteran. And I think we can also talk differently about someone who's been here for 20 years, who paid their taxes and worked hard and contributed to their community and didn't break the law and didn't do these things. And those folks are deserving of our humanity as well as our veterans.
Good. With the problem.
Thank you. For the ACLU question, can people that are deported come back after their 10-year bar? Now, I think you answered that, but I think that this is more specifically the 10-year bar. Would you add anything to your answer?
If it's a 10-year bar based on unlawful presence, you can. There's a.
Well, here, hold on. Let me.
If you're barred subject to Section 212A9C of the Immigration Nationality Act because of your prior unlawful presence for more than a year after 1997, then you can request a waiver to come back into the United States, and you can apply to come back if you have qualifying relatives and an approved visa.
I just want to add that we talk about these waivers and it sounds like, oh, you fill out a paper and you got it. When Matt was saying about qualifying relatives, it's hard. It's not just a blanket, everyone gets it. It's up to the discretion of the embassies and the consulates, but you need to show you have a U.S. citizen relative or a green card holding relative, and it's an extreme hardship if you weren't here, and it requires a lot of evidence. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Nathan, yep. Nathan, I think you have a fan up here. This is Nathan, do you think?
So the question says, do you think Trump will help veterans? I suspect it depends.
Yeah, he'll help veterans.
You know, I think it depends. The question is, see, the beautiful thing about being a veteran, and there's a great book called Tribe that talks about one of the reasons veterans struggle so much when they come home. And it's because when you're in the military, you don't see these divisions. Right? You don't care what political party they are, you don't care what religion they are, or if they're of no religion. You don't care what their race is. We integrated 16 years before the Civil Rights Act. We integrated when we were in a Plessy v. Ferguson world where separate but equal was the rule of law. And we don't see these divisions because we have a common sense of purpose and we have something that holds us together. And so when we come home and we come to a society that is so divided, you know, in the military we didn't care where you were born. It was irrelevant because you were a part of someone who's committed to care. So it deeply offends us as veterans when we see these divisions and these differences, and particularly when it relates to veterans. It's one of the reasons why the military so totally embraced the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell without a single disciplinary issue, because it didn't matter. None of these things matter. And so, will he help veterans? My hope would be that he would help all of the veterans. And that means veterans that are struggling with post-traumatic stress, and that means veterans that are struggling with addiction, and veterans that are struggling with low wages, and veterans that are struggling with homelessness, and veterans who have been deported from the country they took an oath to defend. So my hope would be that we don't say, well, we're going to help some of the veterans who might have been born here and doing fine. But the reality is we have to help all of those who served. And my hope would be that we wouldn't just apply that to veterans, we would apply that to all of Americans, those same things.
Thank you. We started on time. We're a few minutes over when we were going to end. I've asked.
Wall Street and the Federal Reserve and APAC and the back.
So we have this room until 7. I'm happy to stay and to talk to anyone that wants to speak outside, but we have to leave this room at 7. I'm happy to do that. I've read all of the questions that people.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You did not.
All the questions. In fact, I can hand them to you.
You filtered one out at least.
I did not filter any out. Every question that was given to me, I read. But that being said, no, you've asked plenty of questions.
This was a controlled meeting.
For yelling.
You only allowed positive questions. You filtered. You censored. You censored us. You censored the questions. You censored us. You censored the questions! Vote them out! Vote them out! Vote them out! Vote them out! Dump Vargas! Dump Vargas! Dump Vargas!
Juan Vargas.